Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you for all coming. Nice to see you. Nice to zoom into London. Only took me like 1 second.
Nice to see you, Mahatma Prabhu. Thank you so much for being back at Wisdom Wednesdays.
Back in action.
Welcome all.
Yes.
Nice to see you all. It's Wednesday night. We're back. Here is Shyam Govinda Das from Radha Krishna Temple in London. And nice to see you all, friends. Helenka, Rohit, Gyanadev, Dee, and those of you I haven't met yet, Dylan. So we have a very, very unique and special guest tonight, all the way from United States, Florida, Mahatma. Many of you, I'm sure, know him already. And I feel so fortunate and grateful that I have the possibility to, to have his association again, spend time with him. And so he's been practicing Bhakti Yoga for the last maybe 50 years, over 50 years. He's the disciple of His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and his books, his seminars, so inspiring, and they're all about, making the wisdom. I think Mahatma Prabhu is very expert at making the ancient wisdom of bhakti very practical, very real, fun, very possible. And so thank you, Mahatma, for being back. How are you?
I am hot. It's hot here in Florida.
Hot.
Hot and sweaty. But we just got some air conditioning in my office, so I will survive. I don't think it's... How's the weather in London now? It's cooling down?
It's cooling down.
Yeah. It doesn't cool down here till November or December. Yeah. Basically April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 6 months, it's quite warm. 30 plus for 6 months, yeah. And when I was in London, no, I was in Ireland, and the temperature got up to like 22 or something, and everybody was complaining it was so hot. And my daughter and I were laughing because that's like winter for us. It was fun. So today we're going to be speaking about forgiveness, and Forgiveness is a very valuable topic to speak about. But one of the reasons we're going to be speaking about it is about 15 years ago, I went on a kind of, you could say, a forgiveness journey within myself, and then I began teaching it to others, and subsequently I probably taught it, I don't know, 30, 40 times, probably given 30, 40 lectures on it. And then 3, 4 years ago, I developed 2 online courses, which I guess we could mention at the end how you can take them on the topic. And as Sham Govinda was saying, one thing I got occupied with was looking at this very interesting concept of karma, which we all understand, that everything is a reaction to our activity, and then at the same time holding on to resentment, which seems to be a contradiction, because if everything is a consequence of our action, why would I be resentful? Because I'm only getting what I. Did I say something wrong?
I'm sorry, I apologize. I accidentally muted you. I didn't mean to. Sorry, Prabhu.
Oh, I said something wrong. You're going to throw me off. No, I'm only kidding. Yeah. So I began in teaching, in studying forgiveness and teaching it. This is one thing that was staring me in the face, that people who believe in karma were coming to me with resentment issues. And I said, this is very interesting, because in theory, if you believe in karma, you would accept that everything is a consequence of your action. Correct? Yes? So what I was observing and analyzing was that what you understand in your head and what goes on in your heart may be in 2 different worlds.
Mm.
And so you might say, I understand I shouldn't be upset, but this is what happened. I'm upset. But it's just, it has to be a reaction to something you've done either a minute ago or a million lives ago. And you say, I know, but this really hurts. So I was observing that, and I was realizing that there's a big problem when we take to spiritual life, and that we get things in our head, but we don't always get them into our life. And this was kind of like the bridge that made me aware of how on many levels we get things in our head, and when we get them in our head, we think we've got it. I understand it. I have it. I know it.
Mm.
But it's not true. And sometimes it's really difficult to understand that just because you understand something doesn't mean you've got it. It just means you've understood it. Because when we understand something, it seems like we've got it, doesn't it? Yeah, I've got it. I understand it. I'm clear on it. But does that mean I'm living it? Does that mean I'm feeling it? Not necessarily. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So this was the entranceway into this reality, that I can understand something in theory, but respond emotionally or through lifestyle or through behavior in the opposite way. And that's why there's a saying, the greatest distance is to get from the head to the heart. So this whole thing opened up when I started teaching forgiveness, because I was also teaching it to people who have been practicing bhakti, practicing Krishna consciousness for 20, 30, 40 years. And they were having issues. And I had an issue myself also. And this like furthered the contradiction. Okay, it's not just people who read something about karma and say, I believe it. These are people who are living as monks, doing it full time. And they were coming to the workshops with issues. And I thought, this is interesting. That to actually live what you believe, that's a whole world of practice, and a whole. So then I would joke with people. I would say, do you know, in the Bhagavad Gita there's 19 chapters, and if you've read Bhagavad Gita, there's only 18. And I'd say, what's the 19th chapter? I'd say, the 19th chapter is your life. So 18 chapters. Now write your life and see, does that match up with the other 18? And everybody would kind of put their head down and say, well, I don't think it would match up entirely. So the 19th chapter is our life. And then you analyze how well does that align with the other 18? And then you get the shock, the realization, not always. So that opened up to me something that I should have understood long back, but it made it very clear. And then I started to reflect on that in my own life, and I came to realize that how difficult it is to be objective about ourselves. Like, has anyone ever told you, especially when you're married, this happens? If you're not married, get ready for it because it's going to happen. You do this, and you say, no, I don't do that. And your spouse or your friend says, no, you do it all the time. And you say, no, I never do it. And so what does that mean? It means we're doing things we're not conscious of, isn't it? Like, we're doing it and we're not aware of it, but everyone around us is aware of it because everyone else has objectivity towards us. We don't have so much objectivity about ourselves. So I started to see how difficult it is sometimes to recognize our own defects, even though they're kind of obvious to everybody else. And that's sometimes why we get in conflict, because everyone else is saying, no, you're like this. And you're saying, no, I'm not. I never do that. And they're saying, you do that all the time. No, I never do that. Like, why is there this paradox? Because it's so hard for us to see ourselves. So then I began looking at forgiveness as just a pivotal point, but then there's kindness, integrity, compassion, honesty. You just go down the list. And then I started to develop or try to develop a way to be objective about it, about am I doing these things, and bring awareness to my behavior. So that so when people say, you always do this, I don't just say, no, I don't. I say, oh, let me think about this. Let me look about this. Let me look at this. Let me study this. Let me see, am I actually doing this? And as I started bringing awareness, I realized a big problem, which I'm sure we're all aware of for other people, but we may not be aware of for ourselves. That when you take to spiritual life, or you take to yoga, or you take to bhakti, there can be a big danger in the sense that you start to think, because I'm chanting or because I'm studying, because I'm doing seva or something, that means everything else I do is good. You know, it's like the guy who makes a lot of money. So, I'm good at making money means I'm good at everything. No, you're just good at making money. You've been divorced 100 times. You're not good at relationships. But there's this, this blinder, I'm good at one thing. And it means I'm smart. I can program computers. That means I could run a country. Or in Donald Trump's case, I can, run an empire of businesses. I can run a country, but it doesn't work that way. So, and I think it's more insidious and more common and more hard to understand it when you bring in spirituality, because when you become spiritual, there's this subtle thing that I'm better than others. It's such a paradox, because when you become spiritual, you're supposed to think everyone's better than me. That's the epitome of spiritual realization, that everyone is better than me. That's what humility means. It's like, inconceivable that I would think everyone's better than me. And then we take to spiritual life, which is supposed to produce this everyone's better than me, and I start thinking, oh, I do spiritual life, you don't. I'm vegetarian, you're not. I chant mantras, you don't. You're a loser, I'm not. That idea starts coming in. I'm better, I'm more enlightened than you. I became vegetarian when I was 14, and you're like 28 and you're thinking about it. You're a loser. What's wrong with you? So we start, not, I'm just joking, but you get the idea, right? We start thinking, because I get up every morning and I do my chanting and I do whatever I do, that puts me in a special position. And the problem with that is because I do one or two or three things, I think I'm covered. You know, it's like my insurance policy covers everything. Here in Florida, we have these things. What do you call them? They're called sinkholes. Sinkholes, and the ground just goes in because it's sand, right? And when you get insurance, they check to make sure there's no sinkhole, and they don't cover you for sinkholes because your whole house will just sink into the ground, and it's too expensive. Because you'll see a lot of ponds around Florida where houses once stood that just they sunk. So it's kind of like I'm chanting or I'm doing something spiritual, and we think, oh, my policy covers everything. I'm perfect on every level. It's not like that, right? So I started to see this as a huge problem, that we were losing. Those of us who are practicing spiritual life were losing objectivity, and we had this very subjective experience, kind of like, I do good in a few areas of spirituality, which means I'm good everywhere. And what I started seeing was that if you think that way, you could never really be introspective. You can never really understand where you're at. And you really need to understand if you're going to make any kind of spiritual progress, right? You need to have objectivity in evaluating yourself. So what I would suggest to all of us is, understanding this reality, try to bring more presence to yourself when you're getting upset or you're becoming intolerant. What are other things we do? Intolerance is common, right? We're becoming upset. We're not accepting something. We're becoming critical. Have you ever criticized anybody? Probably never, right? Yeah, when we're criticizing, even if the person did something wrong, still we're criticizing, right? So, we want to justify in our mind, well, he deserves to be criticized, or he deserves to be chastised. My anger was righteous. And, we have all these, like, I'm spiritual, so my anger must be righteous, right? No. So we want to stop and catch ourselves and say, wait a minute, what are you doing? Is this proper? And if you can develop that consciousness, you'll be amazed at how many times you can catch yourself doing something wrong that you never realized before, that you justified before, or you didn't even notice it. Because I'm spiritual, I cannot do anything wrong, so you don't even notice it. Isn't that interesting? The mind is an interesting machine, isn't it? It has the capacity for major delusion. I am so great, I'm so fantastic. So this is, by studying forgiveness, this all came up with it. Like, why is this person doing this? Oh, Prabhu, it's your karma. No, it's his fault. Now, then it gets even more amazing. You know how we were saying humility means you think others are better, and that's where you should be progressing towards in spiritual life, but sometimes it becomes the opposite. Well, there's an aspect of karma that is mind-blowing, amazing, and I don't know if you've heard this before, but if you take to spiritual life, it is said it absorbs you of your karma. But then something bad happens. It's like, well, I thought I was becoming free of karma. Why is something bad happening? And so sometimes something bad happens because you need it. You need it to learn. It's going to help you. It's going to push you. Because we all know that sometimes, unless we get pushed, we kind of don't get out of bed, so to speak. You need I need a little earthquake to dump us out of bed. Otherwise, we lay there. Our life just kind of lays there. And so sometimes the karma is actually kripa, grace, mercy, to move us. And in one book, Srimad Bhagavatam, some of you are familiar with this book, it is said something amazing, that when you're practicing spiritual life and something bad happens, you think, okay, this is a lesson, I have to learn something. But you also think, actually, I deserve worse. That who knows all the things I've done over so many lifetimes. So there's so much karma that's surrounding me through lifetimes. So a person thinks not that it's his fault, it's her fault, but thinks, actually, I deserve worse. That's an amazing state of consciousness, isn't it? I deserve worse. What does that mean? That means that I have some karmic reaction coming, but because I'm practicing spiritual life, it's been minimized. Rather, that is a complete opposite of resentment towards that person, right? Isn't that interesting? So as I was analyzing, all these factors, I was thinking, spiritual life is a lot more than just chanting. When it comes down to behavior and developing saintly qualities and so forth, it's not easy. We have this verse. Some of you know this verse. Trinada Pisunichina. Torora. You know that verse? Should I sing it? I made a little song. And I'm going to explain it because it's so amazing. Hold on a second. Trinada Pisunichina. Torora Pisunichina. Manina Mana Dena. Kirtaniya Sadamari. So now I want to explain this. This verse is what I call the 4 impossible things that nobody can do, that we all have to do. These are 4 impossible things that are required for spiritual life that none of us can do, that we have to do. And there's a song that there was a person practicing bhakti. When he heard this verse, he said, I give up. I can't do this. Number 1. You ready? You're sitting down, I hope, because you might faint. All right. Number 1. You should have the emotional experience that I am lower than grass. Than one blade of grass, I'm actually lower. Wow. How many of you woke up this morning feeling lower than a blade of grass? Raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous. Nobody. Why should we feel lower than a blade of grass? Because the soul is 1/10,000th the size of a tip of a hair. So we actually are lower than grass. Aren't we? Did you know that? The size of the soul? Take a hair, cut it 10,000 times, that's the size of the soul. So grass is kind of big compared to the soul, right? But what does it mean to feel lower than grass? It means there's no false ego. There's no ego that I'm number 1, I'm special, I'm the man, I'm better, I'm the woman. I'm better than you, smarter than you, more talented than you. I can make more money than you. I have a better job than you. I have better this and that than you. That's all what we call false ego. Not ego. Ego just means identity. False ego, that's false identity. And so more humble than a blade of grass means complete vulnerability, complete objectivity. I see myself as I am, as a minute soul. And I see my faults with compassion, not with self-denigration. I see my faults, I'm aware, I work on them. So, can you imagine that level of humility, feeling like grass? Now, some of you are listening to this and say, I already have no self-esteem. Now if I feel like grass, I'll probably want to commit suicide, right? Jump off the what's the bridge? The London Bridge? Is that it? Over by is the London Bridge which goes over the Thames? Is that it?
Yes.
That's a good bridge to jump off, right? Okay, after class today, I'm going. It's over. I'm supposed to be more humble than a blade of grass. I already feel like. I don't want to say the word, but the word I would use. I already feel like blank. I already feel like bleep, and now, if I feel like lower than a blade of grass, what's the use of living? And it means living without false ego. It means living without arrogance. It means being real. It means being vulnerable. It means not pretending that I'm someone I'm not. Did you ever pretend you're somebody you're not? kind of, walk up, put your put your special clothes on, walk, yeah, it's like, I grew up in Los Angeles, right? So everyone in Los Angeles when I grew up is like looking like either a movie star or a rock star because in those days when I grew up, it was that's all the movies. I don't know, Bollywood was like, who would look at Bollywood movies? No one in the West. And the whole rock scene, yeah, it was there in London, but it was also California, Los Angeles, all the clubs and famous nightclubs and Hollywood. So everyone's walking around with their guitar case and, looking cool, That was the mood, trying to be somebody you're not. And I have I have friends, two of which are very famous musicians and two of which are fairly famous actor and actress. And when they walk around, they don't walk around like that at all. They just walk around like normal people.
Mhm.
Isn't that funny? The people who are actually doing what everyone else is imitating is just they're kind of wearing, t-shirt and some some plain shorts and just, being themselves. So lower than a blade of grass means be yourself. Don't try to don't try to impress people falsely. Then the next one, the next impossible one. Be more tolerant than a tree. Okay, first question. Does anything bother you? Do you get bothered when like the tube is too crowded? Or there's some strange person sitting next to you that won't look at you when you look at them and you say hello and they won't look? That's pretty common in London. I've noticed that. I think the phones have really solved that problem because everyone just gets on the tube and looks at their phone. That way they don't have to interact, right? Whereas if there's no phone and someone says hello, you kind of have to, it's impolite to not interact, right? Well, last time I was in London, I think it was November, and I got on the tube and everyone was staring at their phone. It was so interesting. I think that was the world's record for phone stares. China's, I think, number 2 from my experience. So there's so many things to tolerate, isn't it? Isn't it? Like you have to tolerate rain and clouds and cold weather for like, 6, 8 months a year, right? 9 months a year. Back, 20, 30 years ago, summer only was like one day. It's expanded now in London. But there's so many things you have to tolerate. The traffic of a big city, the air quality, it's just on and on and on. So this verse says, the tolerance of a tree. And why does a tree use as an example? Because if you chop down a tree, it doesn't complain. You can do anything you want to a tree, and it just gives you fruit, flowers, and shade. It doesn't complain. And fuel. And sometimes the word forgiveness and the word tolerance are used synonymously. Because if you can tolerate, you won't take action against, correct? You'll let it go. It's just, okay, tolerate, let it go. When we don't tolerate, what happens? We take it with us. We hold on to it. We become disturbed, we become angry. So, I think it's interesting if you, sometimes people say, well, how do you know what is spiritual? And I say, well, if I was right now smoking a cigar and drinking a beer, you might think, wait a minute. You're saying he's spiritual, but it doesn't look like it. And then my 3 girlfriends walk in bikinis, and you're like, okay, that's it. This guy is bogus, right? That's obvious, isn't it? But I think tolerance is not, we don't register that as much. Like that is not a sign of someone who's spiritually evolved, that they're very intolerant. It's a sign of a spiritually evolved person, isn't it? So how do I know this person is spiritually evolved? My spiritual master said, you know the greatness of a person by how much they can tolerate. That's how you evaluate. Isn't that interesting? A magnanimous person, a great person. can be understood by their level of tolerance. Interesting, right? So tolerance and forgiveness, they're really the same thing. And we need to look at that in our lives. When we're becoming intolerant, we need to stop and look and say, okay, what's going on here? What's underlying this? What's the consciousness that I'm lacking now that's causing me to be intolerant? Because if you go deeper, you'll see there's a spiritual lacking that's causing that. Yes. D, it's definitely true. D says, isn't there a line between tolerating people's abuse? There is. So for the sake of this discussion, yeah, I wouldn't tolerate, we don't want to tolerate abuse. But for the sake of this discussion, we'll just talk about ordinary things. You know, someone's driving and they cut in front of you. You know, you're 3 minutes you're 3 minutes late to work and your boss gets upset with you. Things like the normal things we have to tolerate. The long lines in the grocery stores. There's a video of, I wish I could find it. It was a speech given by this professor. It was like a hippie professor. And he's telling the students what your life's going to be like when you graduate and go to work. Have any of you seen that video? He's describing, you know, most of these people who start working are single. He's describing, you're going to go to work early in the morning, you're going to get home 6 and 7, and then you're going to look in your refrigerator and there's nothing there, and then you have to go to the grocery store, shop, then you're going to have to cook it, clean your pots. Been there, done that, right? And then when you're exhausted on the weekend, then you get to do your laundry. Da-dun, da-dun. So he was describing that. And somebody made a video of it. Of what, you know, so it showed the person working, you know, dealing with all of that, and then driving home in the traffic, and then getting home, opening the refrigerator, there's nothing in it, and then going shopping, and then sitting in a long line. And do you have coupons? Do you have coupons in your country? Like you get things on a discount, and you have that? Yes. So this person, you know, was going to save like, you know, 25 cents with 5 coupons, and it was like, it wasn't going well, and the coupons weren't scanning properly, and they had to call the manager. And this person who's playing the part of the person that the professor's talking about, one person played that, is sitting in line, and right behind him, there's a girl on the phone. Yeah, you know, I wouldn't do that. You know, like everyone in the store could hear her. And the guy in front of him is sitting in line, and he's like big fat guy, and he's eating potato chips, and they're all over his face and all over his shirt. And it was so real of what life is like, of what we have to tolerate. That's life, isn't it? You ever been on the airplane and the person behind you is talking really loud? And they talk nonstop for the whole flight about their daughter and their son and their father who's in the hospital with this and that. And the whole flight, they don't stop. That's life. And we're sitting there like, you know, we want to say something, and, you know, we're being disturbed. And so these times, this is like real test. This is real life test. How are you doing in your spiritual life? How's your tolerance levels? Because this is, as Dee said, we shouldn't tolerate something that's destructive. But in general, this is a this is a quality we are asked to develop. Be tolerant like a tree. The tree can take all kinds of. A tree can take anything without complaining. All right. So now I'm going to go to the next one. The third thing we can't do that we have to do. We can rename the class, the 4 things we all have to do that none of us can do. The 4 things we have to do to become self-realized that none of us can do. But by the power of mantra, we'll be able to do it. The number 3, this is also going to be a tough, number 3 and 4, if you have low self-esteem, this is going to make you want to jump off the bridge also. So, number 3, I'm going to say them both together because when you get them both together, it's like two punches. One may not knock you out, but the second will. You have all respect to others and not want any respect for yourself. I already hate myself. Now I'm, I'm going to give all respect to others, and I'm not going to accept any respect for myself. What does that mean? Okay. I want to ask you to do something. Just try this on for size tomorrow. If you're going out in the world, try this on for size. Just think, okay, today I'm going to try to respect everyone, and I'm not going to try to position myself so I look cool and everyone's going to say, hey, you're looking good. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to take the mood of I want to offer all respect to others and not demand and not position myself to get any respect from myself. Hey, did you hear what I did yesterday? Yeah, you should go on my Facebook page. It's amazing. No, we're not going to do that. We're just going to say, oh, we're going to offer respect in any way we can. Try that, and then you'll understand how important this is for spiritual life. And it could be the most amazing day of your life if you do this. Like you could have amazing realizations and how do you respect everyone? So now you're saying, how do I respect? There's a homeless man, and there's a guy who just walks out in his Gucci suit from a Rolls Royce. I mean, how am I supposed to respect all these people equally? You're not respecting them materially. You're respecting them as spiritual beings. You are a soul. You're a divine being. You are part of God. I respect you. You're a living being. I can respect you. That's how you do it. Materially, there's too many inequalities. It has to be spiritual. You are a living being. I respect you. God is in your heart. I respect you. If this would be a good exercise. Walk down Oxford Street because there's so many people, and try to see that the body is a vehicle. They're in the body is the soul, and the super soul, God, the divine spark, is there with them, and just see that. You will have the most enlightened walk down Oxford Street of your life, of all your lives, because this is the reality. And if you do that, then see how that affects your consciousness. And how do you start feeling? You'll start feeling, yeah, we're all tiny souls. We're all equal. And the need to show off will be replaced by the bliss and pleasure of respecting people. If you show respect, if you show appreciation, it's transformational. So we do something in our forgiveness course, and I just heard a story which is similar. There's a video. Maybe, Shardia, you could put the link to this video in the chat. There's a video of a lady who was taken to a concentration camp when she was very young, and all her family, except her sister, was killed. And later in life, when I guess I don't know how old she was, I wasn't paying attention, she got to meet the person in Auschwitz that was torturing her. And she got to forgive him. But there was another person that did worse torture to her. And her friend told her, you should forgive that person. She said, I can't forgive him. He did so many horrible things. She said, just pretend that person, just pretend that person is sitting in the room and just tell them I forgive you. That's all. Whether you forgive him or not, just say it. She said, I said it, and it was an amazing experience. Just saying it was an amazing experience. I felt this burden just lifted off of me. So, you might say, isn't it artificial that I go out on the street and I pretend like I'm seeing the soul? And yeah, maybe artificial. But if you do it, you will notice a transformation. If the person you're trying to forgive, if you can appreciate them, you will notice a transformation, however hard it is. If you say, I forgive you, if you write it down, I forgive you, I know you were trying your best, this is all you could do, I don't hold it against you, you will see a transformation by the action. It's very, very powerful. So, offering all respects unto others, not wanting respects for myself, that goes completely against the nature of the consciousness of practically everyone on this planet, doesn't it? How many people you know who just are happy giving respect to others, who never try to get respect from others? You know anybody like that? Have you met them yet? Yeah. That's spiritual life. That's amazing. You know, I think a lot of people don't understand what spiritual life is. They just think, you know, you get a blue t-shirt and you're in, you know, you're spiritual, you know. And you go to the yoga center and like chant Om, and no, but when you actually study it, you see, no, this is where it's at. When you develop these high levels of tolerance, humility, appreciation, and so forth, this is where it's at. This is what spiritual life is. So, if this is an exercise from our forgiveness workshop, if you can try to appreciate the person who's harmed you, who you're trying to you're trying to forgive, you can just say words of appreciation and see what happens. See what happens to your heart. See how you feel. Because even if you don't have the consciousness yet, but if you can act the way a spiritual person should act, you start to become like that. This is a very, very important point, because a lot of people feel, well, I shouldn't act it because it's artificial. But the point is, you can change the way you feel about something by acting that way. You know, right? You know from experience. Maybe you go out in a bad mood. I'm in a bad mood today. And your friend says, just be nice to people. Just say hello. It'll change your mood. So you go out. You're in a really bad mood. You go, hello, sir. Have a good day. You know, and like in 5 minutes, you feel great because, isn't it? Because you're acting against how you're feeling and thinking. And if you go along with how you're feeling and thinking, then you're just going to like look at everybody and say, get out of my way. I don't want to see you. You bother me. Because you're in a bad mood. So you don't allow that bad mood. Jnana Dave, that's a good question. Doesn't that contradict walking around? It's different because it's not ego-based. It's service-based. You're trying to improve yourself. So say, if I want to learn how to be free from ego, I want to learn how to be humble, so let me start with it. And I could say walking around like a rock star will not make you a rock star, but it might put you in the arrogant mood of a rock star. But you want to find someone you want to follow and the person you want to be like, and if you act like them, you develop the consciousness. I'll tell you this story. This is an amazing story. We did a workshop once, and one of the assignments we got was to try to imitate someone, take on their postures, their voice, and so on. So one lady did Martin Luther King. So she kind of had to enter into Martin Luther King. So she said, you know, I have a dream. She did it really well. And all the gestures and the intonations of the voice, she did it all perfectly. And they said, what did you feel like when you were doing that? And she said, I felt like I was incarnating as Martin Luther King. You know, like that I felt something come over me in which it wasn't me anymore. I was feeling like his compassion, his magnanimity, and so forth. So that's interesting. When you try to act as if you were like that, the way you would like to be, you start developing that mentality. You don't have to take my word for it. Just do it and see. Try it yourself and see what happens. But you already know this. Nice to people, you start feeling like being nice to people, isn't it? Kind to people, you feel more kind, compassionate. I have this experience, and I've seen this many, many times. In a lot of the work we do, we go out to people to share, to give. And a lot of people are not appreciative, and it's not always easy. But as we give, what happens is we want to give more. And the more we give, the more we want to give. It just becomes spontaneous, even though maybe earlier in the day we weren't feeling so generous. But as we give, like sometimes we distribute prasadam, spiritual food, or we distribute kirtan, or distribute books or knowledge. And as we give, we want to give more. Even if we didn't feel like it, by doing it, we start to feel like it. So that's a challenge for you. You can appreciate the person you're trying to forgive. You can see people spiritually and deal with them spiritually. You can practice tolerance, practice this living without ego, just being real, being who you are without trying to impress anybody. And you know what's the irony? If you really want to impress someone, don't try to impress them, because you'll be the first person they ever met who wasn't trying to impress them, and they will be very impressed. Isn't that interesting? The best way to impress someone is don't try to impress them, because they'll say, this is the first person I've ever met who wasn't trying to impress me or get something from me, or just be a friend, be real, like that. So we're going to go, is the idea we go 5 more minutes and then we take questions? Is that correct? Yeah. So I want to say, I thought what I said today is very important, because it was a lot of what I realized about being spiritual. And I didn't say so much about forgiveness, and I'm sure you want to hear about it. And there's one main thing that I've been thinking of lately that I think is a very powerful thought. You look at your life and you look what's important in your life. And then you look at any resentment you have towards anyone, or any envy, or any ill feelings, whatever it is. And you ask yourself this question: do I actually have time to hate this person? Do I actually have time to resent this person? And if the answer is yes, something's wrong. If I have time to hate somebody, something's wrong, isn't it? Because we should be feeling life is valuable, life is important, right? We always say life is short, and especially if you're on the path of self-realization, you need all the time you can get, and you've really understood what life's about. So having said all that, you have time. Okay, now let's go and think ill about this person, and let's think about all the bad things they did to me, and let's get upset about it. And do you actually have time for that? The obvious answer is no, we don't have time. So I want to put that little thought in your head, and you can apply this thought to so many things in your life. Do I have time for jealousy? Do I have time for envy? Do I have time for this and that? You can make up your list. And that can be very, very helpful, because you realize that I'm giving time and energy to something that's only having a negative effect on me. Isn't it? Like, why would I give time and energy to something that's having a negative effect on me? It doesn't make any sense, does it? But we do it all the time, don't we? Like here in America, there's a lot of people that really are upset with the way Donald Trump is running the country. And they're very obsessed with thinking about him. And they're thinking about how much they don't like him. And they can give you a laundry list of all the things they don't like. And there was once a spiritual teacher who was giving a talk, and he was, very aware of this principle, how a celebrity or a political figure can absorb your consciousness. Right? So it's very easy for people to become absorbed in political figures they don't like, isn't it? And they're always thinking, oh, you hear what he did, you hear what he said, and it's like, so, when people say to me, what do you think about Trump? I say, I don't think about him, because I have no need to think about him or use. And if I think about him, I'll probably just get upset. So why would I want to think about something that just upsets me? So this spiritual teacher was giving a talk like 10, 20, maybe it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And there was a big court case that was on television in America about a football player named O.J. Simpson, who was not convicted, arrested for murder. It was a murder trial. They thought that he had murdered his ex-wife. And he is a big, big, high-profile football player. Do you follow American football in England? Anyway, so imagine, like, you have your number one football player, and now he's on television in court in a murder trial that he murdered his ex-wife. It's a big thing. So this football player, he's like huge. And in the beginning of this talk, this teacher said, I have one request for you. Stop watching this trial, because it's just deviating your consciousness from where you need to be and where you need to go. So that's my question to you. If you have a resentment issue or some friction with someone, do you actually have the time? Can you afford the time to put into it? Number two is try to understand that if someone did something wrong to you and you allow yourself to be upset and you hold on to that, you're actually punishing yourself for the wrong that another person did. You're punishing yourself for what they did wrong. Like we see this sometimes in traffic. I don't know if your country, you're more polite than we are in America, but I know in Italy, because I've been there, if somebody cuts you off in Italy, they do one of these, right? Yeah. I don't know what it means, but I know it doesn't mean I love you. Yeah. Not with the expression on their face, right? So it's like, okay, this guy shouldn't have cut in front of you. He made a mistake. And now for his mistake, you punish yourself by allowing yourself to become angry. Isn't that interesting? I'm going to punish myself because he cut in front of me. It's like, that's what we're doing. So this person did something wrong. They abused me, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life holding on to this and feeling upset about what they did. No. So that's what resentment is. It's a form of self-punishment. And so when you start to look at it these ways, you start to realize that life is like this all the time. There's so many things that happen that we hold on to. And by holding on to them, what are we doing? We're punishing ourselves. Yeah, today my boss at work, you're on the subway thinking about your boss. You're at home talking about your boss. You have nightmares about your boss. It's like, why do you want to take your boss home with you? You don't even like him. If you like him, take him home with you. If you don't like him, leave him in the office, right? So now we punish ourselves. And we think we're actually getting back at them, because then we start telling everybody, my boss is so bad. And we think, hey, I'm stabbing him, I'm getting back. But all we're doing is punishing ourselves, making ourselves feel worse. And that's what resentment is. We punish ourselves in the name of punishing them. And that's why Nelson Mandela said, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the person will die. But he also said, when he was being let out of jail, people are saying, all these people imprisoned you. Like, how are you going to forgive them? He said, if I don't forgive them, even though I'm walking out of jail, I'm not walking out of jail. I'll still be in the prison of my own consciousness, of my own hatred. So he understood it clearly. He had a very clear understanding of this principle. And he wasn't in any way denying that they did anything wrong or trying to justify it. He was just stating a fact. If I don't let it go, I'll still be in prison, even though my body's outside of prison. And this is very, very powerful, because you can apply this to so many things in your life. And you see that there's so much self-punishment. And that's why in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a verse, some of you know this verse. Krishna says, the mind can be your friend or enemy. And if you look at your lives, you'll see so many problems you have would not be problems if you looked at them in a different way. Isn't it? This is a problem, and your friends are looking at it and saying, I don't think it's a problem. Oh, yeah, it's a problem. No, it's not really a problem. Yes, it is a big problem. And so you're making something a problem that doesn't have to be a problem, because this is how your mind is processing it. So then your mind becomes the enemy. And here's the amazing thing. And this lady in that video who was an Ashvis said, when she forgave those people, she said, I realized that it's my choice to forgive. It's no one else's choice. I could do it at any time, right? That's important. It's an important realization, because otherwise we think, no, it's how it is. This is just how I feel. No, we're allowing ourselves. Okay, and I want to say one more thing, which I think can help us a lot. And that is this. It's a question. First, I'm going to ask a question. Does the world need more forgiveness, or does the world need more resentment? Okay, easy question to answer, right? You don't have to answer because I already know your answer. Okay, but here's the next thing. Are you giving the world more resentment, or are you giving the world more forgiveness? It's an important question to ask yourself. What are you contributing to the world? More resentment or more? The world needs more forgiveness. Contribute to it. It will be helpful. Not only will it help you, it'll help the world. And so, and if we want to call ourselves spiritual and we're resentful, it's a big contradiction. So these are, within the time we have, these are some points I decided to discuss. And if you want to see the courses I have, if you go to bhaktieducation.com, we have 3 courses, 2 forgiveness courses. There may be one introductory course, a short one, like 20 minutes, and one self-esteem course. And for those who are within our circle, like all of you, we made the course absolutely free. And if you like it and you want to help, you can give a donation, but that is totally voluntary. So you don't have to worry about how much does it cost. And if you feel you need to go further in this topic, you can take the course. But I would like to say also, even if you don't have a big forgiveness issue or any issue, there's so much value in the course. There's so many things that come up related to the topic of forgiveness that we learn about ourselves. So I think it's an extremely valuable course. I've benefited tremendously. I've benefited tremendously from developing the course and teaching it, because it's broad spectrum. It covers life in a big way, and forgiveness is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, so now we can ask questions, and we have questions till when? For another 24 minutes? Is that it? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I
Yes?
think 20 minutes, a little more, 25 minutes up to 8 o'clock UK time. So yeah, 20 to 25 minutes. So please, guys, fire away with your questions. Gyanadev, yes, please, Gyanadev. He has a question. You can just unmute yourself or your mic.
Gyanadev.
Thank you so much, Mahatma. It was there was a lot of seeds there, lots of seeds of wisdom, and they resonated very much. Some of those questions that I was typing, I couldn't get the nuances, trying to type so fast, trying to listen to you at the same time. So there were some things that I missed out that you obviously answered. But one of the main things that I just wanted to ask was that maybe in your course you have it, but I just wanted to find out if there are exercises that you offer in the course or something that you could recommend. I only say this because the forgiveness element sounds or seems it comes across to me very similar to a meditation that the Buddhists do. And it's for forgiving like your neighbor and then your friend. And then it just starts to think of all of these people that you love and sending love out. I think it's called the loving something. But I just wanted to find out if there is a meditation, more so because sometimes I feel that with the body, well, not that I feel, but it's proven scientifically that the body holds on to areas. So unconsciously, we take a lot of our pain and trauma into certain parts of the body. And then you mentioned about feeling or referring to ourselves in comparison to other people as less than nothing. So how does that affect the body and the psychology of trying to let go and open up? Because when you were saying that, I felt my posture just slouch. And I was like, but if I'm trying to be a proud person that's carrying myself with pride with the light of Krishna, to be shrunken down, and obviously I'm seeing Krishna and Shiva and everybody, but how does that not mean that I can still carry myself with grace and poise, because the body needs to open up, my
Yes.
chest and my anahata needs to open up in order to receive
Yeah.
love and give love. So without going on any
Yeah.
further, if you could please just give me some advice, if you could suggest. Thank you.
Okay. So yes, we have many exercises in our courses. We have a foundational course, and that has 10 exercises and 10 lessons. And we have an intensive course that has, I think, 33 lessons and 30 exercises. And these exercises are amazing. And they start transforming your heart and consciousness exercise by exercise. And they're, it just works. It's just doing it. It's fantastic. So you can take either course. If you have time, take the intensive. It's a little longer, but the exercises are beautiful. As I think one of the problems, not that I think, I know, one of the problems that all of us have when we talk about humility is that we tend to look at it through a material vision, because when you actually have it, it's not the way you think it's going to be when you have it. You know, because that's why I was saying with the low self-esteem, it's kind of like I already feel low enough. I don't want to feel any lower. How can I be empowered, and how can I do my work for the world if I'm feeling humble? But my realization of humility, it just means that you become an instrument. It's like once the false ego's out of the way, then you become God's instrument. And that energy can just flow through you. And it's really the pain you feel inside, it's really the false ego. It's not the humility is causing the pain. It's that there's not enough humility. So when you're saying, okay, I can't do this, but God can do it through me, that's when the magic happens. And you'll do amazing things that you never thought you could do. And so you're empowered, but the empowerment is not, I'm great, I can do it. The empowerment is he's great and he can do it through me. And so you do much more. But, the I'm great, I can do it, that's that's just normal, what everybody thinks. And so it's really a question of where you get your inspiration. You want to get your inspiration from I'm great, I can do it, or you want to get your inspiration, he's great, he can do it through me. And that was the idea in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna said, I can't do this. And Krishna said, no, I'll do it. You just have to be an instrument. I'll do it through you. And then he did it. And when my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, came to America, when he first came, he thought, this is impossible. We're going to present this knowledge to Western hippies. How will they understand? And so he prayed to Krishna, just put words in my mouth. I need to know what to say. I need to dance to your beat because I don't know how to do this. And that's what he did. And that's how he was successful. So that's where the real power is. It's, the buzzword the last 20 years, empowerment. Empowerment's a spiritual world. It's actually in Sanskrit. It's called avesh. Avesh is the word in Sanskrit, empowered. You have avatars who are avesh. Avatar means one who comes down, and avesh means one who has power, one who descends with power. But also, avesh is also for people like you and me. Avesh means empowerment. So ordinary people get special empowerment, and then they can do something very special. So you can do amazing things if you're humble. The more humble you are, the more you'll get the empowerment. And the more your ego gets in the way, the more you'll lose the empowerment. So it's just, redefining what humility is. It's because when we say humility, we think, oh, if I become humble, everyone's going to take advantage of me and I'll just become a loser and I can't do anything. No, it's actually the opposite. You'll be the most powerful because now you're connected to the most powerful. Does that make sense? Or you have more to ask? Good? Fantastic. Now you're full of Gyan. Gyanadev is now full of knowledge and enlightenment. Okay, next question. Sorry, I think Saradia wants to talk, but she's muted. And Sham, you're muted also.
Shardia, do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. So my question, Mahatma, is how can we discern between the difference between the need to forgive and the need to address, an issue or behavior that we know is wrong and might be harmful to us or might be harmful to others if we allow it to continue? So how can we both forgive but make sure that, someone doesn't continue to do something which is ultimately also going to be harmful to them?
Yeah, that's a good question. And they're not mutually exclusive. Either you forgive or you punish, or you deal with the situation, you don't forgive, you don't deal with the situation, you forgive. They're not mutually exclusive. I think of the example that comes to mind for me is a judge, because a judge cannot be partial if he's going to judge a case. And so he becomes the murderer. Now, if the judge is holding on to like any kind of issue about murder, then how's he gonna abjugate the case properly? So he has to he has to have no ill intent, no ill feelings towards this person. Then he can be objective. And I think in the same way, if we truly want to deal with an abuse, if we first forgive the person and then take practical action to rectify the situation, whatever that may mean in the particular incident that you're in, then it's the best of both worlds, and it's the best way to do it. Number one, you don't hold on to resentment, so you're not contaminating yourself, you're not harming yourself. And number two, you can be compassionately deal with the situation, and compassionately dealing with it may mean that this person needs to be tried for their crimes. That may be, and normally we would say, well, why would you try them for their crimes if you forgive them? Because, like you said, because their actions are destructive and could continually be destructive to me or to other people, and for my own well-being and the well-being of others. In some cases, it's necessary that legal action be taken against these people to reform them and stop what they're doing. But you can best do it if you actually forgive them. Then there's no aggression. There's no aggression there. There's just that we practically need to deal with this situation. So let's say your business partner stole your money. So you go to court. You want to get the money back. It's not like you're going to hate him for the rest of your life. You hate what he did. You're upset, obviously, but you don't want to go to court in rage. You just want to, let him go. He's did what he did, but I need to get this back, and no longer can we be partners. So there's a fine line there. But my realization about this is if I don't do that, if I think I need to hold on to the resentment to rectify the situation materially, then I'm punishing myself. I'm harming myself. I'm carrying this around. I'd rather not carry it around. It's very harmful spiritually, but it's very harmful physically also. And that, I think it's something important for us to know, that resentment is very harmful physically. So it's toxic poison in terms of emotional toxic poison, you could say. So do what you have to do to rectify the situation or protect people from the behavior of this person or make this person's behavior known, and at the same time forgive them, not mutually exclusive. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. Thank you very much. Can I just ask a short follow-up question?
Yes.
So we see, like, both in the case of Nelson Mandela, who publicly stated that he forgave the people who imprisoned him for 40 years of his life.
Yes.
And this lady you mentioned, Eva, who survived the Holocaust and then publicly also forgave the doctors. We saw that there was this, publicly there was a lot of resentment towards them then for forgiving. So my question is, because they said by forgiving, you are basically
condoning.
consenting.
Yeah, they think they're condoning.
Yeah, you're condoning what
Yeah.
has happened to you
Yeah.
and to us. So my question is, why do we associate resentment with some type of power that we hold over others? And why don't we associate, forgiveness with power?
I can speak for myself that before I really understood this topic, then I more or less thought that way as well. And holding on to resentment does give a false sense of power that now I can hold you liable for what you've done. All I have to do is just let the world know. And I have the right to punish and so forth for what you did. But if the whole world lives that way, the world's bad enough as it is. If the whole world lives that way, it's going to be much worse. And I often ask the question, what do you think is going to be a better world? A world in which people are forgiving or a world in which people are not? And of course, everyone says, yes, the world in which we're forgiving. So the connotation that forgiving means condoning, that has to be cleared up. And that's, I think, where people go off. And I know someone who's Jewish, and he said, we shouldn't forgive what the Nazis did. And I always say, you forgive for yourself. You forgive for the world, but you don't condone. So you hate the sin, not the sinner. So as long as we I think the fear is like, let's say, with Auschwitz and that whole thing, the fear is that if we forgive, then we'll forget, and then it'll happen again. Isn't it? Isn't that kind of but that is not necessarily true. We can forgive and still make the world aware this is what happened and this should never happen again. And we're going to move on in our lives. We're not going to burden ourselves with the pain. Because part of the problem is if you don't forgive, you stay connected with that event. And it just becomes a negative emotional experience, albeit subtle, for your whole life, and it affects you. So you don't want to do that. But you want, definitely in this case, you want the world to know, or in Nelson Mandela's case, he wants the world to know what went on during apartheid. But he knows it's not going to be effective to take aggression against the people who imprisoned him, because that's what they did to him, and two wrongs don't make a right. So my understanding of it is that it's like, the saying, fight fire with fire, but on a practical level, you never fight fire with fire. You fight it with water or other ingredients that put it out. So I think not forgiving is kind of like we have to fight back with the same consciousness that came to us, but the same consciousness that imprisoned him is not the consciousness that he wanted to fight back with. He wanted to fight back with something higher, with forgiveness, because he felt that would be better. And so it doesn't mean he didn't recognize what went wrong, but he didn't want to take the same actions they took. And so that's how I've understood it. And if you look at your life, you'll see there's a huge temptation to fight fire with fire, right? Somebody's aggressive with you, you're aggressive with them. Somebody mistreats you, you mistreat them. But if the world's going to be better and we're going to be better, we have to respond to lower consciousness with higher consciousness. We have to respond to people, not with the same negativity that they throw at us, but with something higher. If we respond with the same negativity, then we're going to destroy the world, isn't it? I mean, just think, every person who hurt you, you hurt them equally. And we all did this. What kind of world would this be? We'd all be dead by now. And there's actually a statement in Mahabharata where this point is made. It was made by Yudhisthira. Yudhisthira is a warrior, and he said, if we don't forgive, we will kill one another, because we'll just retaliate with aggression for the aggression that was put towards us, and we'll destroy one another. So that's how I understand it. So your point is well taken, and it doesn't mean we're condoning by forgiving. It means we're raising consciousness to a solution that will be better. Because aggression is never a solution, and if aggression caused the problem, how does that become the solution? And we see, look at all the wars. What have they solved? Maybe they solved overpopulation. Maybe that's why there are wars, because the powers that be want to reduce the population of the world. But they haven't solved anything. And so we have to dismiss this idea of fight fire with fire. It's not, you don't fight fire with fire. You fight it with water. You fight darkness with light. You don't fight darkness with darkness. And that was Nelson Mandela's point. I'm going to fight darkness with light. I'm not going to fight it with darkness. Otherwise, you just have more darkness. Does that make sense? Is that okay? Or you have...
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciated that answer.
Important point, yes.
Can I make a comment?
You can.
Maybe it's also a question,
Only
actually.
one.
I found very interesting, insightful, and also insightful the principle that forgiveness is something that we should put into practice. As you spoke of the importance of, for example, showing appreciation to someone who might have mistreated us, or someone who has hurt us. And so forgiveness is not just a feeling, or it's just not an abstract idea, or is actually action. I mean, and I think this is something that I struggle to understand sometimes, because we study the books, we might philosophize, we might be intellectually very fond of understanding the spiritual principles, but until we practice that principle, I think forgiveness is one of the qualities of the Brahmana in the 16th chapter. But unless we actually practice it, even if we're not convinced about it, if we actually start practicing it, maybe in due time we'll actually internalize it. Yeah. How come it's so difficult to put into practice, even if we study, or sometimes we forget?
I'll tell you a story. It indirectly answers the question, then I'll elaborate it. This student of Buddhism was given a mantra, and his teacher said, you have to chant this mantra thousands of times. And he said, why do I have to chant it so much? And he said, well, for so many lifetimes you've been chanting the other mantras, all for me, it's mine, I want more. So now you have to, get the scales up on the other mantras. So why it's so difficult is because of lifetimes and lifetimes we've been thinking and acting in one way. And so now when we understand what to do, we still have the momentum and the habit of those other lives. And so that's what predominates. It's like here's the keyboard, right? We're playing. And the teacher says, no, don't play it like that. And I said, but I've been playing it like that. I've been holding my fingers like that for 20 years. They say, no, you got to put your fingers like that. And for me, that's like torture, because my fingers want to go a certain way. And you say, okay, that's muscle memory. But we have emotional muscle memory. We have consciousness muscle memory, quote unquote muscle memory. And so, have you ever understood something and say, that's amazing, I've understood it. And then like the next day you acted in total opposite way. Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Or 2 days later, or 3 days later, whatever. It's the habit. And so you have to consciously practice acting in the way that you know is right. And gradually it starts to become the new program. We are so programmed through not just this life. This life is bad enough. We're so programmed through this life. What to speak of all the other lives, how programmed we are. And that's why sometimes you're thinking of something or you're desiring something and you're asking yourself, why am I desiring this? I don't even want it. Isn't it? And the mind saying, you should do this. And you're saying to the mind, why? I don't even want it. I stopped doing that 10 years ago. But it's like, it's like the stain on the shirt and you're trying to wash it out and you use bleach and use everything you could find on Google. And there's still this little stain there. It just doesn't want to go away. That's why. And when you understand that, it's very liberating, because you understand it's actually not me that's saying do this. It's the habit that's saying do this. And I have a voice in this. I don't have to do it. I can talk to the habit and say, sorry, habit, I'm not doing that. I have my own intention. And this is it's so interesting about the mind, because unless you separate from the mind, you won't be able to do that. The mind will say something and you'll say, okay, the mind said, buy this, let's go out and buy it. The mind says, I need to have this, let's go out and do it. But if you think, wait a minute, that's not what I want. That's just my mind saying, and I don't have to. Then you start to get liberated and say, okay, so now let me act in the way I want to act, even though maybe it's not natural, but let me do it. And as I do it more and more and more, it starts to become my way of being. And then I learn from this that I can do that all the time with my mind. It says do one thing, but I don't have to. I can say, wait a minute, mind, I don't want to do that. That's big and liberating, because most people don't say that. Most people aren't that powerful that they can say, their mind says do this, and they say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not good for me. That's a sign of very successful people. They can do that, right? Control the passions, and I feel like doing this, but it's the wrong time. Don't do it. I have to deal with that every day in the work I do, because I'm my own boss. So in a sense, I could do whatever I want whenever I want, but that's not the best way to operate. I have to do what's important. And so the mind says, why don't you do this? It's fun. And then I have to say, shut up, mind. I have to do this other thing. And then as I practice doing it, it becomes easier, right? So that's the price we pay for having done all those crazy things in our past, in this life and the past lives. You know, it's like I became a monk when I was 19. And that was 51 and a half years ago, right? So 51 in a year, and I grew up in the 60s. So what's the 60s? You know the 60s, Beatles, Stones, whatever else, right? So the reality is I can remember all those songs. I can't erase them. They got in there, right? I love you, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's in there. Yesterday, it's in there. We all live in a yellow. It's all in there. I can't get it out. But I don't go around all day singing them. I go around singing Hare Krishna. So if that song comes to my mind, then I'm going to have to play the Maha Mantra for it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Instead of Yellow Submarine, I'll have to sing that, right? So it's just what we have to deal with. It's in there, you know, and we're trying to purify it, transcend it, or engage it, you know, somehow or other, right? That's what we have to do. It got in there. And maybe on very high levels of spiritual life, it's kind of erased. It becomes more or less irrelevant because you lose the taste for it. So it's a reality. You are who you are, and you know it's what you're dealing with right now. And so deal with it now. And desire to be someone else, but just don't be depressed about where you're at now. But you know, to want to be more advanced is fantastic. Okay.
Thank you
Anything
so
else?
much. Thank you so much. I think this is such a relevant point to accept. I think that's the right word, to accept where you're at and
Yeah.
moving forward from that point, rather than trying to, you know, be someone you're not.
Yeah. Because I mean, accepting where you're at is so simple, because it's like, I give the example. It's like you turn on your GPS and it says you are here, and it's you're so far away, and you're like, oh, I hate being here. It's so far. Well, you know, you're 5 hours from your destination. It's just where you are. Yeah, but it's 5 hours and it's so long and I don't like driving. Yeah, but you know, it's just where you are, and you'll get there. Just keep driving. So I think some of us are like that. Oh, I hate where I'm at. I hate who I am. No, you are who you are, and you are where you're at, and that's not going to change right now. But as you're moving forward, celebrate. You're going forward. The destination is there. That's, you know, instead of being depressed about where you're at, why not celebrate where you're going?
Mm.
You know, I always joke, you know, you're flying, you're going to fly, you know, to some island and, you know, have this paradise. And you go, yeah, but the plane trip is so long and my luggage is so heavy. You know, well, you're going to this beautiful island. Why aren't you happy? Yeah, but, you know, it's going to be such a hard trip and we have to get up early. People would think you're crazy, wouldn't they? I think, you know, why aren't you just thinking about this island and the white sand beaches and the aqua water and the palm trees and the coconuts? and the water is like so warm, and it's a beautiful hotel, and everything's nice. Yeah, but it'd be so hard to get there, and I hate to, I hate to travel, and you know, it's like that. We're traveling on the spiritual path. Why don't you be excited about it? The destination is amazing. I am who I am right now at this moment, and there's nothing I can do about it other than try to be better in the next moment. That's all I can do. And when you accept that, you'll be shanti shanti. You'll be okay. You'll be much more peaceful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. It's
You're
four
welcome.
4 minutes past 8,
Okay,
and
time's up.
time's up. Thank you so much, Mahatma Prabhu, for being with us. Thank you for your
My
time.
pleasure.
So
My
many,
pleasure.
so many transformational points,
Yeah.
and I guess we all agree that we don't wanna have time for resentment, and
No, we're too busy with other things. Better
yeah,
things.
and the goal of the spiritual world and service and bhakti
Yeah.
and bhakti lifestyle is so beautiful that there's not really time for
Yeah.
resentment. And thank you so much for that. We hope you be able to join us again one day soon. And because it's so good and inspiring to spend time with you. Thank you for your time again, for your
Thank you.
association. And
Yes,
we
and should I put in the address? Did anyone put in the address for the
for the course.
yeah?
Yeah,
Did
well,
someone put it? Bhakti education? Yeah, it's there. You
yeah,
see it under um. That's a link to one of the courses, and there's more. So if you just bhaktieducation.teachable.com, that will take you, and it's under D. D put it in, right?
okay, let me
So you
post
see
it.
that?
Yeah, I will share
I
it
can
once
copy it
more.
in.
I'll copy it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just the bhaktieducation.teachable.com. That's enough. And then
All
you
right.
can. Okay, super.
Thank you again.
You'll
We
like the
wish you
course.
a wonderful rest of your day in Florida,
It is. Thank you. Yeah.
and
My
hope
lunchtime now.
to connect with you again very soon. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you next time.
Haribo. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your night.